My guest is Rami Kleinman. He's the National Director of the Canadian Friends of Hebrew University. Welcome to the show, Rami.
Thank you very much for having me.
And you've been on before for little segments. This is a big one. I want to interview you about the Canadian Friends and all that, but I want to leave it to the second segment and talk more about your background, because I think it's intriguing. You were a very political animal in Israel. Tell me about your politics as a youth.
Well, I grew up in a very famous village called Binyamina, and a lot of politicians and people who are in the academic today grew up in this little village. I think that there is a joke that there is something in the water, but I think it's
locate Binyamina for our audience.
It's right in the middle between Haifa and Tel Aviv. It's on the railway. Today it's a community of 10,000 people. When I grew up, it was 3,000 people. But we actually breed politics. We grew up, straight into youth movement. When I was in grade 2, I was recruited by Shlomi Gravitz, the late Shlomi Gravitz, who was in a later stage the head of World Beitar and then the chairman of JNF.
Was the whole town Beitar?
Almost. I mean, we can go into an old argument. It was one part of it Labor, but the majority of it was Likud, and it's consisted from a neighborhood called Nachalat Jabotinsky, who obviously was people who grew up in Beitar and came and made Aliyah through Beitar. And it was the hardcore of the ex-Irgun people, the ex-Lehi people, the Stern Gang people. And some of them was labor. So it was a very interesting dynamic. I was born in 1961, so if you can imagine, it was after 11 years after, or 13 years after Israel got independency. So all the political issues and I would say some of the bad blood from the different ideology was still existing. And I grew up in a very, very political environment where we've been educated in a very, very early stage to love the land, to love the country, and to stand for what is right. And part of it was, I would say, a right-wing upbringing that I went through. Beitar was a very small youth movement that was not actually the biggest one, but was very, very ideological, and with one message. The message is stand for what is right and protect what we own and what belongs to us. And this actually shaped my politics in the future when I was growing to work, went on my first shlichut to South Africa, when I worked with students, and I was confronting all kind of interesting challenges in South Africa, while pre the end of apartheid and the whole dynamic between the Jewish community and the African community, and what is the role. So it was a lot of interesting things.
If there was a dove like me in the environment, could they be your friend?
Absolutely.
So you had friends who were on the other side?
Absolutely.
So
I look at politics as a part of a social fabric who create a society, and I think that if we will sit here and we will be all in agreement, life will be a little boring. I think a stimulation is coming in a stimulation born from differences, and I think that when I was in South Africa, I remember the dynamic between the different youth movement. We had a great relationship because I look at it as something positive who can lead into a better me and a better you. When I understand you better, I will become a better person. When you understand me better, you will become a better person. So this is my philosophy till today. I had, all my life friends from all political segment of the society, from all ethnical groups. I speak Arabic. I'm very, very involved I was very involved in Arab causes in Israel.
I see.
The fact that I was what so-called a right-winger didn't stop me for work for social justice for Arab minorities in Israel, because I feel that it doesn't matter what is our politic, but as a society we should protect and make sure that everybody give an equal opportunity to grow socially and educationally. So it's an interesting combination.
How did you get to be work for Shamir? Is it just your rise through the ranks of the Beitar?
Yeah, it's the Likud and Beitar and Cherut was a very small, I would say, community. Once Menachem Begin was elected, I think it's turned to be a movement of the masses. Not till then. Till then, it was, I think, Israel went through a different, interesting dynamic when, almost like in a semi-communist socialist country, when you're afraid of changes and you want to make sure that you show your loyalty to the government. But when Menachem Begin came, and I think that's his major contribution beyond the peace, is closing social gaps in the Israeli society. And when I was attending one of the Kurs Madrichim, counselor courses in Beitar, and Menachem Begin was the head of the opposition, he was coming to visit us in the camp, in the course, and I was one of the one that's chosen to ask a question. And I remember the question. I stood up and I asked Menachem Begin, if he will be elected to be a prime minister, do we see is it going to be a fulfillment of the philosophy of Zev Jabotinsky? And he, of course, gave me a very diplomatic answer. And in fact, I had an opportunity to meet his former secretary, Ariela Kotler, Erwin Kotler's wife, a couple of weeks ago in Montreal. And I shared with her the story, and we had a lot of good stories about Menachem Begin. So after I went recruited by Shlomo Gravitz to go on behalf of the World Zionist Organization to South Africa, I came back, and Ronnie Milo was the head of World Likud, and he was very close to Shamir. Ronnie Milo was recruiting me, and this is the way it's worked.
Well, I want to ask you a question, if you can reveal anything. I don't know whether you can. But, you know, I had an image of Shamir because I did work on the refugees, and his gang assassinated Bernadotte, and here was this guy, which was, I think, a stupid thing to do in my own mind, retrospectively. But yet he became the prime minister, and you work with him. What was he like? Can you tell a story to give it a character?
First of all, he will never admit. What do you think he did? You know, he will never.
Okay. I should withdraw that because, according to the records and the scholars, whether he did it, I don't know. But
it shows. Shamir was a man of a very few words, and he was a very strong. I would say leader and a person, and if we judge the time, and history will judge his work as a prime minister, you will see that despite his right-wing politics and despite a lot of things in his personality and despite the fact that he was a man of a very few words, you see what's happened in Israel and how Israel progressed under his leadership in terms of international relationship, economy, and so many other things. But I think that what one story will capitalize the whole Shamir philosophy will be, you know, he was visiting one of his very first visits, I think the second or the third visit to Washington. He went to see Bush the father, and there is an anecdote that's not a lot of people know, but when he came first time to Washington after the election of Bush the father, President George Bush Sr., he threw up a gala dinner for Shamir, and it was a state dinner, and the dress code was, of course, black tie. Now, those of you who remember how Shamir was, to put Shamir into a black tie will be almost a mission impossible. And Shamir refused to be dressed with a black tie, and especially bow tie, and he said, I'm not a clown, I'm a prime minister. And he showed up with a black jacket and a black tie, but not according to the dress code. And Bush Sr. was really offended by that. And a lot of people say that this was setting the tone of the relationship for the future relationship they had. But one of the visits that he came, he had to have a meeting with Bush Sr. We all sat at the Blair House, and he left for the meeting with a couple of advisors, and after an hour he's back. And we all know math, and we know that 10 minutes drive, 5 minutes going in, it's already half an hour. Half an hour meeting is a very bad meeting. And he came back, and we all sat in the room, and the late Harry Horowitz, which was one of his advisors, a South African guy, asked him in a very, strong South African accent. So, Mr. Prime Minister, how was the meeting? And Shamir was, reacting in a very typical way, and he said, the fact that I'm the Prime Minister of small Israel, and he's the President of big United States, doesn't mean I have to agree with him. and this was Shamir. He will stand for what he believed. He didn't see the need to. He believed that he need time. Maybe a lot of people, if we look at all the peace initiatives that we went through in the last number of years, the only advantage I think that we have in them that we keep on trying, but there is no real solution right now. I mean, I'm just a small man who is running an organization. I don't see a magic solution, and I don't think that Shamir saw a magic solution. The only problem that Shamir was a little bit too honest about it and less diplomatic about it, and this was not a good thing.
I'm going to take a minute from the next section to follow up on that, but we'll take a break and come back, okay?
For sure.